Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you may be in the world. Welcome to Gift of Healing TV. Today, I am delighted to be joined from Australia, Liara Covert. Liara, thank you so much for joining us. It's a real pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, Liara is going to be sharing with us the power of breathwork, plant medicine, and ayahuasca. So I'm looking forward to that, and I hope you are too. But let me introduce you to her first. Liara Covert has been described as a cosmic shaman, yogi, spiritual psychotherapist, mentor, breathwork facilitator, philosopher, and world bridger. She has seen sacred geometry all her life, yet pivotal turning points led her to consciously tune into states of consciousness, energy, spirit worlds, rites of initiation, and healing modalities to serve the greater good. She offers courses like astral, lucid, and dream yoga to empower people to more my apologies, my head goes into strange things at times. To more conscious co-creators in this world and others. Through decoding her own mysteries, she comes to assist people to solve their own, experience the value of the full spectrum of vibration, and move into harmonious love. Liara, thank you so much for joining us today and to be sharing these things with us. Please share a little of your story and how you come to do what you do. I know there's been a little bit in the bio, but... Oh, I've lost the sound.
Certainly.
Oh,
Thank you for giving me this opportunity. You do have sound, do you? You can hear me?
I can. We seem to be out of sync.
This is a good start.
Yeah, we seem to be out of sync, your lips to your voice. So please carry on, and I'll just be a little bit patient.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Sarah, for giving me this opportunity. It's interesting how we come to certain points in our lives and we start to reflect on, I guess, the process that got us here. And for me, I'm someone who's done many different things over the years, not unlike your listeners in all likelihood. We tend to do more than one thing on the road to expanding our awareness, getting to know ourselves better, coming to realize what authenticity is and what authenticity isn't. In my case, I was born in Canada, so I was in the Northern Hemisphere to start with, but I've traveled quite widely. I spent a number of years in Europe, but ultimately the big changes happened when I moved to Australia. And literally that turns my life upside down because now I'm in the Southern Hemisphere. It changes time zones dramatically. It changes energies. And essentially my life was turned topsy-turvy. You know, at one stage I wasn't paid for some extensive work I'd done. I encountered many other challenges where I had to develop resilience, resourcefulness, and ingenuity. And all of those kinds of life tests, you might describe them, led me to breathwork. Now, people have heard different approaches to breathwork. I'm a yoga teacher, among other things. And in yoga, we call it pranayama when we have different kinds of breathing. But the breathwork that I'm referring to here is something called holotropic breathwork. It's conscious connected breathing. And it was coined by a psychiatrist, a Czechoslovakian psychiatrist by the name of Stan Grof in the 60s. And what he was doing at the time was doing extensive research with individuals who were taking LSD. So he had a government grant for hallucinogenic research. And at the time, he was accumulating a lot of very interesting information. But then something happened. The government decided, oh, maybe this isn't such a good idea. We better cut off the grant. And he was not able to continue on that path. So what he did was he developed a kind of breathing practice that offers participants the opportunity to experience similar effects to those that people who had taken LSD were able to experience. And he called it conscious connected breathing. He set an environment where there was particular kinds of music with changing rhythm. There was also sometimes aromatherapy or movement, and there was art therapy at the end of the process, because many times participants would not be able to describe their experience in words. So often people drew mandalas, geometry, or other symbols to help to express what they'd experienced. And for me, hearing about that was very interesting, because as you point out, since childhood, I've seen geometry everywhere. This is just my norm. And what happened was a friend of mine went to a business success breakfast in Melbourne, Australia, and there was a psychotherapist doing a talk. And as you do, you listen to the person, and sometimes they give you an experience. And he did an intro to breath work for this friend in the group there. And my friend told me that it wasn't for him. It was too woo-woo. That's what he described. So he gave me the brochure, and he said, maybe this is meant for you. So I took that to heart and thought, maybe I'll investigate. And when I called this psychotherapist on the phone, I was quite startled to discover that this individual could tell me things about my life that I had not told anyone, only through the rhythm of my breath, the tone of my voice, and reading energies. And if any of our listeners have ever had mediumship done, card readings, people reading auras, energy fields, sometimes information coming from those kinds of experiences or healings can be quite startling, but it can also be very illuminating. For me, it was a pointer to something I wanted to learn more about. So I got ready to go to this retreat that this individual was running. And I didn't know how it was going to happen, but I just knew I was there. So as things do come together, synchronicities happen. I did a little research before the event because we were given a bit of homework. And I started to realize through dreams and other experiences that there was more than one reason why I was drawn to this person. And I ended up doing a kind of survey online just before I went as well. Intuitively, it came to me, as things do on Google. You know, we're always followed, and people seem to know what we're thinking and what we want, even without us telling them. So I took this survey that was a bit curious to me at the time. And the survey revealed that there was 85 to 95% chance that I was this thing, that I fell into a particular category. And I'm not used to being put into categories. So I said to myself, okay, well, I'll take this with me and see what happens. And I got to the retreat, and there were 12 individuals there. So there's a special number in numerology for all our listeners. And each individual was asked, why are you here? And as you do at this kind of an event, you share a little bit of your story. So as we went around the circle, yes, we sat in a circle, another symmetrical kind of reference. Each individual shared something. And as people might imagine, there was a range of reasons why people would come to such an event. We had people who had experienced things like military trauma, religious trauma. There were marital difficulties. There was eating disorder issues. There was sexual trauma. There was violent physical abuse, rather. So there was quite the full gamut, you might say, of different reasons why people had come. And of course, everyone left me to the end. So I was number 12. And when we got around to me and I was asked why I was there, I said, well, I'm here to solve a mystery. And of course, at that stage, many people thought, okay, what are you on? I want some. They figured I must have been on some sort of drugs. So I was in the right place because there were other people there detoxing. But I assured them I wasn't on anything to the best of my knowledge at the time. And I proceeded to tell them a few things that had come to me before coming to the event. And namely, I just felt these particular things, ideas were connected. And I wasn't quite sure exactly how. And so I invited people to take this on board and come on a journey with me. And so it all begins with the number 5. 5 has always been my lucky number. And everybody in the audience agreed they had lucky numbers. So they stayed with me at that point. And then I went on to say, well, I have 5 friends in 5 countries who share my birthday. And the number 5 has been very significant in my life in different situations. Whenever I've had a raffle ticket or played bingo, the number 5 is in there somewhere, I tend to win. So it's good luck for me, financially and otherwise. And then it would show up in addresses. And I've lived many different places over the years. So I'd have 5 or a multiple of 5 in almost all of my addresses. I'd have 5s on license plates. It would come up wherever you could imagine. Even on a menu, I'd take number 5 or number 55 in an Asian restaurant, whatever it was. You get the message. And so other than the number 5, there were some other things that stood out to me as being a reason for being at this event. And a number of them stood out like this. There was a man I'd met in a foreign country who shared my deceased sister's name and looked very much like me. And I found this quite astonishing. And then over the years, I came to realize that a number of my friends turned out to be twins. And I wasn't aware of that because I never met the second twin. And in many of these cases, a twin had died tragically or unexpectedly from an illness. In one case, there was a car accident. In another case, there was a suicide. So, generally tragic ways. And then over the years, I also encountered twins in other scenarios. I had an uncle and an aunt who were fraternal twins. I used to say to myself, I really wanted twins. You have these intuitions. And I was even an au pair or a live-in nanny for twins as a student. And I didn't think much of it. I just thought, another connection, coincidence at the time. Now I see it more as synchronicity. And so the audience by this point is saying, okay, get on with it. What's the survey thing that you mentioned? How is this going to connect number 5 with all of this? And so I said, well, the survey was about, how will I put it? It was something called vanishing twin. It had to do with the probability that the person who took the survey was someone who had lost a sibling in the womb during a trimester of pregnancy. And so I was there to confirm whether that was the case. And lo and behold, after my first breathwork experience, I re-experienced the death of my twin brother in my mother's womb in the first trimester. And so in essence, what that means is that there were not 4 children in my family, there were 5. So that was another point where the 5 came out. And that sort of sent me on a journey in many different directions. Can you relate to any of the coincidences I'm talking about? Do things stand out in your life that you feel are connected, but you're not sure how?
Oh, I'm just a great believer in accepting that it's not a coincidence, it's synchronicity. There are things that have happened, sort of the word ocean, oceana, oceanic, they all sort of came to me and when one of those linked to somebody sending an email from one of those, it was just like, okay. And sort of my friends said, oh, Sarah, I had this email for you from so-and-so at whatever, and they want to connect. I said, yes. And it just looked at me as if to say, what? It was that third. For me, it's 3s. It very definitely is 3. There was something else that came to me in 3s, and it's something comes at you once. It comes at you a second time. It comes at you a third time. It is trying to get your attention. It's not a coincidence. It's synchronicity. It's the universe trying to get your attention. So absolutely, I sort of get all that. And it's trust those things in your life, isn't it? It's trust. I found myself going to a series of workshops. And I remember the day I was going to the very first one, I'm thinking, what the heck are you doing, Sarah? You don't see things, you don't hear things, sort of very rarely get anything in meditation. What are you doing going to an energy workshop? And I ended up by doing the full series of 10, sort of, but I signed up for it for whatever reason. I went and did it. And it was one of the best things I could have done in my life. So you don't have to understand the reason at the time, do you? And it's really important to sort of to trust that process. It really is important to trust that process. Now, you've talked about sort of breath work, and we're going to be plant medicine and the ayahuasca. So can you share a little bit more about breath work, and potentially even just sort of a little sort of example, something that everybody can actually join in with?
Certainly. Well, we do have many different kinds of approaches to breathing and breath work. The holotropic breath work that I was originally trained in is a conscious connected breathing practice. And we can do a nice meditation, which actually can be very relaxing. Now, conscious connected breathing is quite particular because what it is all about is allowing you to bring the subconscious mind to the conscious level, because we're conditioned in our minds to assume the subconscious exists and the conscious mind exists, and we can't always access the subconscious mind. There's a lot of hidden things that are not accessible to us. You sort of think of the analogy of an iceberg, with only a very small percentage of an iceberg being at the surface or beyond the surface, whereas the vast majority of that would be below the surface. So through breath work or conscious connected breathing, you are essentially giving yourself access to different aspects of yourself. Many people access shadows or trauma or secrets, things that they haven't been aware of or they've forgotten that might contribute to patterns in their present day adult life for the most part. Some people will even have what are called midlife crises. This is a very common term. And when you look at it from the point of view of breath work, you can reframe midlife crisis into midlife unraveling. And it doesn't just have to be in midlife. There are people that will experience a dismantling of their lives at many different stages, but we're at different stages of resistance and allowing also. So breath work enables us to be more accepting of a process as we shift from something called struggle to surrender. Many of our listeners can probably relate to struggle. Many have heard of surrender, but may not have experienced complete surrender. When I work with people as a psychotherapist, for example, and ask people what surrender means to them, they'll often say, well, it means to give up or to give in, as in surrendering in a conflict or a war, for example, putting up the white flag, withdraw the troops. But another view of surrender is completely different. It's about allowing and just sort of going with the flow, and letting go of control is the big thing. And that's what a lot of people are hesitant to do or have been conditioned not to do. So when it comes to a gentle breathing practice or meditation, I'd like to invite our listeners to take both of their hands. I'm just adjusting where my computer is here. You can put one hand on your chest and you can put one hand on your belly. Okay? And as a way to just ease into this for gentle practice, we can just do this 6 to 10 times. Okay? You can start with your eyes open when you feel comfortable, but we're going to be doing 2 inhales. An inhale is if you're inhaling through the belly, and an inhale is if we're inhaling through the chest, and then inhaling and then exhaling outward. And we want to do this through the mouth if we can. If that's a little complicated for you, you can do the inhales through the mouth and out the nose. Sorry, inhales through the nose and out the mouth is what I meant to say. But ideally, you want to do all of the inhaling and exhaling through the mouth. Okay? So listen to the way I do this and see if you can follow. And once you start getting the rhythm, inhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, inhale, exhale, allowing yourself to close your eyes down, continuing with your rhythm, focusing on the breath, and being mindful of where you're typically breathing. Because so often we're taught to breathe at the chest level and forget how to breathe deeper. So this exercise is between breathing in the belly and breathing in the chest. Inhale, inhale, exhale. Inhale, inhale, exhale. Listening to the rhythm of my voice and following the rhythm of your breath. Just being mindful of how the energy is flowing through your body. Recognize that in our culture, we don't really have an outlet to explore pain, not in the meaning of what we're feeling. And this practice is one of the ways that we can bring things to the surface safely so we can feel. Inhale, inhale, exhale. Inhale, inhale, exhale. Inhale, inhale, exhale. Following that rhythm of the breath, noticing that some emotions might come up for you. Breathing through the mouth can evoke a bit of discomfort. You might feel dry lips or a dry throat. But seeing if you haven't started breathing through the mouth and exhaling through the mouth, if you can shift there now. Inhale, inhale, exhale. Inhale, inhale, exhale. We're doing this journey together, and this practice is enabling you to tune into deeper parts of yourself. Inhale, inhale, exhale. Inhale, inhale, exhale. Inhale, inhale, exhale. If you do notice emotions arising, simply let them come. If you find images passing through the mind's eye, experiences you might have had on this trajectory, this timeline, just allow yourself to observe them and continue to breathe. Inhale, inhale, exhale. Inhale, inhale, exhale. Noticing it's safe to feel, it's safe to breathe here, and it's safe to allow energies to flow. We're so conditioned to resist, to hold back, to suppress, to deny. But as human beings, we're meant to experience the full spectrum of energies available to us. Inhale, inhale, exhale. Inhale, inhale, exhale. Inhale, inhale, exhale. Allowing yourself to continue with your breathing pattern, following your rhythm for another 6 to 10 breaths. Inhale, inhale, exhale. And just paying attention to the sensations arising in your body. And also localize those feelings, those sensations. What part of the body do you feel them in? Inhale, inhale, exhale. Reminding yourself that every moment is an invitation to learn about love, to let yourself love yourself more, to see everything as a call for love, a message about love, or a pointer to love. So as you're breathing here, finishing those 6 deep, connected breaths, ask yourself, where in your life are you withholding love? And what would allow you differently? Loving yourself, loving others, or changing your whole understanding of love. For love is an energy. It's a consciousness that flows through all things. And it is a gift and a teacher available to all of us through breath work and other modalities to help us remember who we truly are. As you finish those 6 breaths, gently reverting to your normal breathing pattern, coming back into your body if you've gone on a little journey. And when you're ready, moving your fingers and your toes, and then opening your eyes to rejoin us.
Thank you for that. I'm going to take some time later and do that again. I was just getting so much tension in my neck and shoulders. But I just accept the fact that that's the way it was, because I was sort of sat up straight and I needed to sit back to try and release the pressure. But I was also listening to everything that you were saying. So thank you so much for sharing that. And I will do that myself later, when I haven't got to concentrate on what's being said.
You tend to have constant distractions.
Well, also sort of just to clarify, in case people are feeling strange, hearing strange sounds behind you, I'm assuming that you're near a gym somewhere. Because it sounds
I am.
Yeah.
For all the benefit of our listeners, as a yoga teacher, I've just finished teaching classes. So in order to make the time for this particular call, I couldn't really go anywhere.
So just in case people think, what on earth is that sound? That's what it is, folks. And Liara is
That's right. We can perhaps come outside and then we wouldn't hear the racquetball courts.
Yeah, that's fine. It's not a problem, but I know it's your sort of spring there, isn't it? So
it is. In fact, we have the first day of summer in December.
Yeah. Yes. When we have the first
that
day. That
might be a little better sound-wise.
Yeah. But so thank you for sharing that, and I am going to do that later, because I do an awful lot of breathing with the sounds that I work with, and I'm used to taking really deep breaths right down into the sort of bottom of my lungs and sort of bringing that up to fill them. But that was very different, and yes, left me with a very dry mouth. Okay.
Well, that's the point. People will sort of say, why are we doing this? And I'll sort of say, well, if you're breathing through your nose versus through your mouth, it happens differently. When we have the nose breathing, nasal breathing, we have the nasal hairs that purify or filter the air. When we're breathing through the mouth, we don't have those filters. So whatever discomfort arises, tension might be magnified, for example, and it's a lot harder to push it back down, repress it. You sort of have to feel it. And one of my teachers, Itan Tonkov, who is the father of biodynamic breathwork, he points out in one of his books, you have to feel to heal, to truly heal. And so often we're taught that talk therapy, for example, is the way to go, rehashing history. And although that has its place, for many people, that just leads to a vicious circle because it's only working with something on a mental level. Whereas breath work takes you into not only an energetic level and a visceral level, but it allows you to bring what's in the non-physical, as in blockages, trauma, and other things, into the physical body so that you can be open to experience those. Sometimes people will emote, for example, They'll have energy build up in different parts of the body, and there are opportunities to release that if that's relevant to a given person or participant.
Yeah, no, that makes a sort of a huge amount of sense. It really does. Yeah, sort of with the work that I do. You mentioned obviously plant medicine, so let's sort of go from the breath work, and hopefully sort of folks will sort of really let themselves experience that themselves, as I've said I'm going to do sort of later. But plant medicine, so anything in particular within plant medicine, and we'll come to ayahuasca sort of, but ayahuasca, is that plant?
Yes, it is. It is a particular plant medicine. And it's interesting when I talk about people, well, what does it mean to them? And it is rather a generic term for many people. So I recently did a talk in the middle of Queensland, Australia on this. And when I asked the audience, the kinds of answers I received were, well, my garden is full of herbs. They're plant medicine. And someone else said, well, cacao is a medicine. Someone else said, well, there are lots of medicines. Tobacco is a medicine. It's a plant. Cannabis is a plant, and it's now used, as a medicine more formally. You have things like poppies or opium, which again is used in some contexts as a medicine. So I bring up the topic of plant medicine because it is so wide and varied. And you hear it used in the context of naturopathic medicine, for example, alternative approaches to healing, which are outside of what we're taught are traditional approaches to healing. But in fact, the most original approaches to healing are grounded in nature, grounded in plants. And ayahuasca specifically is one I draw people's attention to because as a psychotherapist, I've experienced ayahuasca, and I also help to guide people to prepare for an ayahuasca experience and also to integrate that experience back into their lives after they've had it. Ayahuasca is a very interesting experience for those of our listeners who haven't had one. It's not for everyone. It's certainly not for the faint of heart. And we hear a lot about it on social media, where people will go off to South America, for example, on a holiday. And as part of ecotourism, will go and take plant medicine for a weekend as part of their experience. There are other people who will spend years purifying the body and going through practices to prepare for an ayahuasca experience. And when it has to do with the healing process, it's not taken lightly. There are practices that exist to help prepare people for ayahuasca. I put it in the context of breathwork because breathwork is a practice that really works with the crown chakra, the head, because you tend to leave your body and get a wider perspective of things from that point of view. Whereas ayahuasca and plant medicine, for the most part, are about grounding, bringing us down to the roots so that we'll feel more connected to Mother Earth, to Gaia, to our destiny, our purpose, or the service that we're meant to offer in our lifetime. And another way to look at it is to review your life from a soul level perspective is one thing that I would use to describe it. Does that help to clarify things for you?
Oh, absolutely. It's sort of, yes, there is so much more to us and our lives than we realize. But I think it is about learning to awaken to that rather than thinking you've got to remember it. Because I really feel that we know everything, but we're made to forget. Then we learn when we're younger, but we're learning from a perspective of other human experiences, their perceptions of those experiences, etc. And we then have to go into that process of unlearning so that we can remember and awaken to the amazing being that we actually all are.
Oh, that is so true. And someone like Carl Jung puts it very well when he says, during the first half of our lives, we're essentially creating, building, reinforcing the ego, or what he describes as the ego, which is that part of ourselves that believes in mortality, that thinks it's born and can die and fears death. It's all about control. It's all about judgment and fear. And then in the second part of our lives, he suggests that we begin dismantling all of the illusion that we have spent the first half of our life creating. So whether you use remembering, awakening, the term really isn't as important as the process itself. And really, we can get lost in language, admittedly. Many words are so charged with the conditioning and experiences that we've had. But essentially, there is a turning point. I sense the listeners can all relate to that. There are turning points in life, pivotal moments or milestones, when all of a sudden the way we live our lives no longer makes sense, or there's something that we've been doing that we've outgrown, and it's time to move in a new direction. And that's something that has happened quite widely with the whole situation of the COVID global pandemic, or what has been described as that. In working with people who are grappling with new ways of living and existing, it really tends to bring to the forefront of the mind what's really important, what truly matters, and what doesn't. And for a lot of people, that's values, that's time that they have in a way that's meaningful and not complaining or focusing on what they can't change. Can you relate to that?
Oh, absolutely. Sort of, I actually love those periods of lockdowns with the technology that we have today, because I appreciate that for so many it was about disconnect, but for so many more there was an amazing connection, and there was the support to sort of help people with that growth. And but plant medicine isn't just about the herbs, is it? It's about everything that we eat, and sort of making sure that we try and eat as much of the best that we can, as natural as we can, starting from the raw, rather than going for a whole load of processed foods. We build our own energy within ourselves. We create a healing within ourselves with the quality of the food that we eat, rather than quantity and the type.
Most certainly. And when it comes to something like an ayahuasca experience, when you do something like that kind of a journey in a serious way or a traditional way, then you do prepare for weeks beforehand, 2 to 3 weeks, in terms of a diet. And there are certain things you have to eliminate or avoid because otherwise the experience will not allow you to get as much out of it. So for people who eat sugar, they need to eliminate most of their sugars. They can eat natural fruits and vegetables, but sauces, things like soy sauce, vinegar, mustard, ketchup, relish, mayonnaise, all the kinds of condiments that we tend to put on our food. You can't have any of that. You don't want to have caffeine, as in coffee or tea. There are a lot of things on a big long list that you're not really supposed to have. And having engaged in a process with a group of people, including a couple of people who did not respect that diet, I can certainly tell you that their experience was far more grueling than the rest of us, because they weren't really open, as open as they could be to the messages or the wisdom that was being shared.
Yeah. So I think all of this, and this I suppose is something I've said and I've heard people sort of say, is we have to be responsible for ourselves. We have to participate in our own journey. What we choose externally and for our internal is our choice. But we have to participate in that healing for ourselves.
Oh, so very true. And I would even go so far as to suggest that it's about radical responsibility, radical forgiveness, radical love, using that word radical multiple times, because ultimately our illusions are so convincing that they have such a hold over us that sometimes we need extreme situations in order to prompt us to see differently or force us to see differently. Some people experience that through dramatic illness, through redundancy, through divorce, separation, situations where whatever their familiar, comfortable life has been is pulled out from under them like a carpet. And then all of a sudden, when they don't have those comfortable things, then they don't have a choice anymore but to take a different look. A hard look at things would be another way to look at it.
I must admit, I refer to it as like a wake-up call. And
yes.
Do you know what? I was so grateful when it happened. I was totally unaware prior to it of what anything like this. But oh boy, has my life changed. But you've just got to listen to so many people's story about they get that collapse in their lives, whether it's health, whether it's job, whether it's absolutely everything, home. Yeah, because there are people who've lost absolutely everything. Yet they
exactly
come back and build it up from nothing. But they come back so much, actually whole. But you use that word forgiveness. And for me, the most important person to forgive is yourself. For the way you've allowed other people, other things to, actually, I'm going to use the word control your life. And those collapses in your life can help you to take back that control. And that's what the breath work is, the plant medicine. That's what so many things, and there are people out there who can support. That's what so many of us do. So there is the support, and you're sharing your journey, I share my journey, because by sharing our journeys from what went on in our earlier lives to the where we are today, you can pull yourself out of that. But it's a mind, body, and spirit. It's not just a one aspect.
Precisely. And this is what is often taught or indoctrinated. You know, if there's something wrong with you, it's based on the body. And that's what keep people focused on the ego or the fear-based belief systems and paradigms. But once you start to begin to remember or awaken, however you want to describe it, to the fact that you are a mind, body, and a spirit that's not even fragmented, it never has been, that you just have a focus of attention that's been hijacked in one direction, then you start to see that there's far more going on than you realize. And some people are just more resistant to seeing a bigger picture, more fearful, because they just haven't yet had the experiences that enable them to open themselves up. And it's part of accepting people for who they are and wherever they are. There's a saying about consciousness. You can only interact with people at their level of consciousness. So if you have had certain experiences in your own life that have been profound, that have awakened you to completely different worlds, dimensions, timelines, things that are totally outside of your familiar, or at least what the familiar used to be, and there are other people who've never had anything like that in their lives, then they're not going to be able to relate to you anymore. And part of the process that we're invited to engage in or embark on has to do with letting go and recognizing everything's vibration, so that when you have finished with a particular situation, you can be open to allowing it to fade out of your experience. There's a saying by Pema Chodron, who is a Buddhist nun that has written a number of books, and she says that the situation you're experiencing is not going to disappear or go away until you learn the lesson you've created that situation to teach you. So that's part of taking the radical responsibility and reclaiming power as opposed to control, perhaps, because control tends to be, a word that has a negative connotation, whereas power is like your inner energy, your radiance, your divine radiance that enables you to know right now who you are, to do anything, be anywhere, create anything without any obstacles. It's a completely fearless being. And for most people, they don't remember that in its fullness, in its complete glory. And that's part of what this journey is about. It doesn't have to relate to a particular religion or scripture or teacher. It's about going inward and coming to trust yourself more. And for a lot of people, that's completely foreign because they've spent much of their lives learning to distrust themselves, learning to distrust people around them, authorities they used to depend on this kind of thing. And so they become disheartened. But sometimes we really have to allow that house of cards to fall before we can rebuild it with a better foundation.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We are at 3/4 of an hour. So that is brilliant. Is there anything before we close that we haven't touched on, or you're thinking, actually, I'd love to share that? If you can stop that bird from behind you squawking. No, that's fine. I love the sounds of nature.
It's great. If it's not the racquetballs, it's the glorious life. But you know, it's nature. And here behind me, symbolically, we have a wall, which is really quite funny because rotate the screen away from the gym, what we have is incredible greenery, because I am in what I would describe as northern Queensland, which is a tropical paradise. And when you have a tropical paradise, you are surrounded by all sorts of creatures. We have crocodiles here, we have spiders, we have poisonous jellyfish, we have some of the most dangerous creatures in the world, but we also have some of the most beautiful plants, wildlife, and other creatures. So I just love that no matter where we are, we have this juxtaposition of contrast. And light and dark is very much like this within ourselves. You know, we have the shadow side of ourselves we're taught to avoid and hide from or run away from. But we also have the light, we have the inspiration, we have the creative energy, and everything is actually complementary. It's part of wholeness. So here we can appreciate the birds and the harmonious sounds and the beautiful landscape, respect and love the dangerous creatures too, because they're part of the whole ecosystem. And without everything, we don't have balance. And there tends to be the desire to get rid of creatures that are described as dangerous, for example, much like there are many people who would like to kill, throttle, or strangle the ego within themselves because we're taught it's bad, just like anger and certain emotions that are supposed to not be good for us. This is part of the misinformation that we get fed. But once we realize that everything is valuable, everything is a teacher, everything has a place, then we come to respect everything, just like we can come to respect ourselves, both the ego and the soul. And the soul and the ego are some topics we haven't specifically touched on, but they're very relevant to this whole journey, because many people have heard about the ego, heard about the soul, and many people also see them as separate. And really, there's a shift going on in many people from being ego-driven to soul-guided, where we shift from thinking our way through life logically, rationally, or based on conditioning and fear, to feeling our way based on love, based on intuition, based on the languages of the soul that come as symbols, geometry, for example, or visceral feelings that we might experience in breath work or through plant medicine. And once we see that there is a connection between everything, that it's all part of the same journey, then we learn to laugh more. That's what I find. Can you relate to that? The sense of humor that helps us all along the way?
Oh, absolutely. We've got to have a sense of humor. So, Liara, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure. And we'll potentially look at bringing you back. We'll do something about soul and ego at some stage. Because I think it would be good to expand on that. But folks, that won't be till sometime next year. So we can organize something that works for both of us. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for your time today, straight after your yoga class in such beautiful surroundings.
You just never know where you're going to find me, in the back of a gym where we have racquetballs in the background, or we have beautiful, peaceful yoga music, or we're out with the birds in the garden.
Absolutely. And they're letting us know their presence.
Well, that's right. And just coming to love everything. You know, there are so many different environments that we put ourselves in, and everything is in fact a teacher, a guide, a pointer to things that we're remembering, awakening to, or integrating into our sense of wholeness, a sense of wholeness that's never left us, but that in itself is part of remembering who we are.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I've put Liara's website up in the chat. What I will also do is make sure, if you're watching this via YouTube, her website is under the video. Please do feel free. If you're drawn to connect with her, please connect with her. And these days of technology, it's amazing what we can do via the internet. So it doesn't matter where we are in the world. So thank you so much. Next week, we've got a today's conversation, Ancient Healing Pathways with Marjorie Bambrick. So it's going to be myself and my co-hosts on today's conversation and our guest. Thank you, Liara. It's been a real pleasure. I'm sure we'll speak again soon. Light, peace, and love, sweet souls. Namaste.
Thank you. Namaste.
Bye.